All right, let me bring in my table for tonight. Former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party, Democratic strategist Basil Smikle, Unfiltered contributor and host of the Part of the Problem podcast, Dave Smith. As always, Unfiltered senior producer Andy Levy. Basil, I think we could say two things are probably true. One, the president really wants to blame Democrats for everything to get off the bad news cycle. Two, Democrats likely do want to use this as a campaign issue. Who could blame them? Fair?
Not the second part.
I don't
surprise. No. But listen, we have a motivated electorate. We don't need something as harsh as this to continue to motivate our electorate. But I would call the president, and certainly Paul Ryan, in the way that he spoke, that those are gutless statements that they're making. Because how do you blame Democrats when, number one, it's your policy, number two, your administration uses the Bible.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm asking. That's not what I'm asking. Yeah, the blaming the Democrats makes no sense.
But we don't want to run on this. This is not something that we want to run on.
I mean, you know as well as I do that Democrats were losing on immigration. Trump was winning on sanctuary cities. He always wins on this issue, and this awful, horrific policy brought the momentum all back Democrats' way. You can't deny that.
I honestly don't look at it that way, and this is why. Because we got blamed a lot for identity politics, right? And for what I think we do in terms of identity politics is a lot more inclusive. We can talk about that all day, every day, and it's a good point for us, in part because of things like this. But this is not something that I think we're going to raise money on, number one, that we don't want to go out.
Oh, I can't wait to have you on when I start getting emails from Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
Fundraising on this.
I think, honestly, we need to stay away from that because it does exactly what I think a lot of folks blame us for, which is politicizing these.
Tell your friends.
I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that. But we can't politicize this. This is a human rights issue. And it should cut across parties.
Absolutely. It's also going to be very politically good for Democrats.
Well, it's obviously going to be good for Democrats, which doesn't mean they don't want to solve the problem.
They don't actually care,
that's two separate issues. Yes. There is a thing, though, Basil, that drives me absolutely nuts, and that is the Democratic leadership, once again, finding ways to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Chuck Schumer got rolled back in January when they shut the government down over immigration reform and then opened it up 3 days later. He got absolutely rolled.
Right.
So now you would think he would learn from that, but instead you've got him out there yesterday saying there are so many obstacles to legislation, and when the president can do this with his own pen, it makes no sense. Legislation is not the way to go here when it's so easy for the president to sign it. I'm sorry. This is cowardice. You are a leader. You need to lead.
You are a legislator.
Yeah.
It's your job.
Your job is not to sit there and go, oh, well, let the president sign an executive order and deal with it. On top of which, the executive order is bad. It's legally bad. To a lot of people, it's morally bad, and it may not even change the big problems here. Is that what Chuck Schumer wants?
That's stupid.
It makes no sense. You got to pass legislation.
Yes. So, Dave, what do you think the legislative solution is here? I know that's a big question. This is a very complicated issue, but what could happen next?
Well, I think part of the issue with that is that nobody is really offering what could be a solution. And the reason why Paul Ryan has a leg to stand on when he says, I think what the Democrats just want is open borders, is it's like, look, here's the situation. America takes in more immigrants than any other country in the world. Donald Trump won the presidency because his central issue was limiting illegal immigration. It was his central issue. 63 million people voted for him because they supported that. And he won. Okay, that's the reality. Now, what's the number? Should it be 2 million a year that we take in? Should it be 3 million, 5 million? The point is, if you have a number and then more people are coming in illegally, what are you going to do?
Right.
Now, is the solution that we detain kids with their parents?
No.
That's not a very pretty solution either. So what do? Do you just let them come into the country, and does that just mean we have de facto open borders? By the way, I would like open borders without a welfare state, without a big government, in a libertarian, society. But that's not going to work in the current society that we have.
But also, none of this really gets around the fact the biggest problem that we're facing right now is this zero-tolerance policy. And I see a lot of conservatives and Trump supporters, and they're saying, oh, I feel badly for the children who are being separated, but hey, the law is the law. The administration is just applying the law. First of all, they're not, because the law doesn't require criminal charges, which is where the separation comes. You can do this civilly. But even setting that aside, it's zero. There was a book that came out in 2009 called 3 Felonies a Day, because the author says that's the number of felonies the average American unwittingly commits a day. Imagine if we had a zero tolerance policy for all these laws. We'd all be in jail.
That's an interesting point.